Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. Juve, Abaluba, yeah, yeah. Abaluba, yeah, yeah, yeah. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. Spirit rise, come to touch the sun. Darkness pass and the morning come. We done pay homage to we ancestors. We done do the ritual for the libation. So we call in the warriors to stand on guard, to protect and preserve this tradition. As we fill each heart, every hollow drum with love. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. The rhythm got on the right. The warriors coming down. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. The rhythm got on the right. The warriors coming down. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. King, gang, 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 gang is Juve. Iron and steel set ablaze to the dawn. No reason to shelter or run from the storm. The drum call anointing every move we make. The rhythm commanding blood and mind to awake. You can't help but answer this clarion call. Not one man must stumble, not one must fall. Unmasking the spirit, come one, come all, with love. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. The rhythm got on the right. The warriors coming down. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come.
Sundays with the George Grant became. Hello and welcome to the Bubb Report. 1 year and 5 days ago, Grenada lost one of its preeminent broadcasters and host of a Sundays with the George Grant. Sundays with the George Grant became a mainstay for Grenadians at home and abroad, and also a sounding board that kept a critical eye on the issues affecting Grenada. Today, we remember and pay tribute to the late media icon.
So much steam is because of another incident which happened a couple of weeks before, again, coming out of the post-cabinet briefing, where the members of the media had been issued a lecture about respect.
Later in our program, we discussed the state of media in Grenada and other OECS countries in the wake of the recently released Reporters Without Borders report on the state of media internationally. According to the RSF, political influence over journalism is on the rise in the OECS, with formerly independent media outlets increasingly becoming influenced by politicians, especially during election cycles, using state advertising as the basis for applying pressure on what these media outlets report. The report makes the point further that journalistic independence is increasingly becoming compromised with increased surveillance on social media networks by politicians and those sympathetic to ruling parties.
And I think that as we go into the future, we need to have populations that are informed so that they make wise decisions that affect their everyday lives. And that all of that will be impossible if we do not have conditions in which people can express themselves freely.
The conversation on free press dovetails into a discussion that will be held later on in the program, in which we will be discussing the exercise of constitutionally protected free speech in Grenada, against the backdrop of claims that the ruling administration in St. George's engages in alleged political victimization against those who openly oppose its governance agenda. Finally, the report would look at the future of organized labor in the region in the context of an increasingly changing and evolving work environment that appears to prioritize contract labor over unionized labor.
Just like a tree that planted by the water.
We welcome our guests, Margaret Francis, Alan Brzezinski, Terence Forrester, Frankston Marshall, Watson Duke, Linda Straker, Lincoln Depredine, Tevin Andrews, and Richie Maitland. It's the week of May 2nd, 2021. We thank you for joining us. A pleasant good morning to everyone, and let me take this opportunity to welcome you to another installment of the Bubb Report. Let me apologize in advance because we might be having some connectivity issues today, but we just want to make sure that you are aware that if you experience any kinds of freezing or any kind of connectivity issues, there might be an issue with my internet over here in Washington. But before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone this week for their well wishes and congratulations offered to your humble servant as I crossed a very important milestone in my academic journey at Howard University in Washington, D.C. I certainly do not underestimate the significance of completing a doctoral education as an immigrant and as the son of working class families from Pomerose and Four Roads and Guelph, respectively. I wouldn't be here without the nurturing and sterling contributions of my amazing and hardworking teachers in Grenada, as well as my media colleagues, former media colleagues, who inspired my love of media and communication. People across both spectra believed in me and in my potential and worked to orient my worldview on so many issues in so many ways. So I take this time to especially thank those of you who made an early impact on my life in Grenada in so many ways. Now, to segue into what we will be talking about on today's program, of course, we want to begin by making the point that Monday, May 3rd, is declared as World Press Freedom Day under the theme Information as a Public Good. I find it ironic that we're having a discussion on press freedom against the backdrop of an increasingly polarized, politically polarized media landscape in Grenada and the OECS, and that is not lost on me. May I remind those of us who wield power that they need to respect their international commitments to press freedom. I will continue to personally advocate, for example, for the implementation of legislation that enshrines a Freedom of Information Act into law in Grenada, as one currently does not exist. I end today's opener with a quote from the American Supreme Court Justice, the late Louis Brandeis, who said, quote, "Sunlight is said to be one of the best disinfectants to keep the powerful truly open, honest, and transparent," unquote. And it is on that note that I wish to welcome my first guest for this segment. I have here in New York Margaret Francis.
Right.
Terence Forrester is joining me from St. George's, as well as Mr. Alan Brzezinski. Lady and gentlemen, good morning. And so what we want to do today is to begin this program by paying tributes to a former mentor of mine, someone who was a bastion of freedom of the press, independent press, and a bastion of the Fourth Estate in Grenada. Can you believe it's a year since George left us? Margaret?
Yeah, it's
Long
it's
time.
hard to believe. Yeah, it's hard to believe that all that time has gone by already. It's just hard to just imagine, Sundays without George Grant or
Yeah.
during, the weekday mornings and just the general programming that he provided. My mom was and is a big fan of Alan's, and she would listen religiously on Thursday mornings when he was on there. So, it has really left a void in many ways in Grenada. And I was thinking when I looked at the theme for this year's World Press Freedom Day that there wasn't a more apt example. I think with it being information as a public good, which is something that was George's mission in whatever he did. His programming was intended to educate, to inform. It was not to titillate. If you wanted that, you wouldn't find it on George's website or his station. That's just not what he was about. So I really
Right.
think that this year's theme, information as a public good, really, really epitomizes George and what he stood for.
Alan, let me bring you in. You were a regular guest on George's program. As a matter of fact, you guys were very good friends. And so, how do you reflect on the void that we have now with respect to just the level of public discourse we see, and just that breath of fresh air that George brought to Grenada? Alan, I don't think Alan heard me.
Hi. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I missed your opening. I want to acknowledge the fact that George's contributions and his legacy do in fact live on, and I want here to pay tribute to the efforts of Cecil Belfon and Vincent Roberts, who decided that they would continue his chat group, which several of us know now as Renatus. And that platform is, I think, quite a busy platform, particularly given the developments the last year or so. And it, not only does it provide a medium for connectivity between Grenadians in the diaspora and those of us resident here, but from time to time, apart from the serious issues, you do get some information and entertainment, a less serious nature, let us put it that way. Of course, because of the volume of postings, one has to spend a lot of time deleting, because otherwise our devices will run out of storage capacity. But nevertheless, that's part of it. Sometimes you wonder what to keep and what to delete. But that really is a significant contribution that Cecil Belfon and Vincent Roberts have made to keeping George's story, I think, current.
So Forrester, I will bring you in. Now, last year when we did a special tribute show for George, Margaret reminded me that we left you out. And so she suggested that we have you here for today's segment. And could you reflect on your relationship with George, Mr. Forrester? When did that relationship really blossom and become something fruitful?
Well, thank you very much indeed. And it's really a pleasure to be on your program. I think this is my first time. And
Yes, it is.
my personal congratulations on your recent accomplishments. May you
Thank you,
continue
sir.
to higher heights.
Thank you.
Let me say that George and I, we went back quite a while, quite a way back. As a matter of fact, he may have even hinted to individuals that I was somewhat a heavy contributor to the success of his program. And I don't say this in any boastful manner whatsoever, but I say this in the context that Grenadians at home and abroad look forward to a Sunday morning. It was like a good, spirited moment. And indeed, we had really spirited discussions. It was really interesting indeed. George, he was a fearless individual. And at the same time, you can say that he was somewhat of a perfectionist, committed to a balanced media. He was a true Virgo put it that way. 7th of September, a true Virgo. Honest, straightforward, determined, goal oriented, and he was an individual that you can sit with and chat for hours, and you would not be bored. But he made a serious mark on Grenada because he brought the discussions to the living room of Grenadians. And he was balanced. And although we sat on different sides of the fence at that particular point in time, it was always exciting sitting in George's living room when he was up on the upper road of Lucas Street. He later went down to Tantine, and both locations. It was always interesting being there with Alan and others, and sometimes drinking his coffee when it was available. But George made a significant contribution to the lifestyle in Grenada, put it that way. And let me congratulate you, Kellon, for picking up the slack, because it's most important that we have a strong media in Grenada. The fourth estate is extremely important for the continued development of our democracy and to ensure that we can develop as a people, to understand that we can differ on ideas. We can differ with respect to what we present, but we must always end up at the end of the day respecting one another for what it is. So George represented something of a rare breed in Grenada, and regrettably we are losing part of this, but hopefully the younger generation will pick up the slack and continue that work which George started. A fearless journalist, a perfectionist by nature, and may he rest in peace.
Absolutely. And Margaret, I'll bring it back here and just to pick up on a point that Mr. Forrester is making with respect to just balanced media. You know, one of the things that I observe about the current media landscape in Grenada is that there appears to be much more polarizing of journalism, or if you want to call it journalism, if it's only one side, it's not journalism at that point. But it would appear that the media the media are increasingly becoming polarized. And as somebody who works in the media in Grenada, can you reflect on what trends we're seeing with respect to the current state of media in Grenada?
Yes, so just to piggyback on what Terry said, and George and I had a lot of conversations about fairness and objectivity in media and that stuff. And that was one of the things that he was very committed to. And as Terry would tell you too, at the time, Terry was one of the few people from the NNP, because at that point he was with the NNP, and he was one of the few people that would show up in George's living room. And probably the only person from the NNP when George called that would come. And George always maintained that, regardless of where he was on a position, that every view should be heard. And so he maintained an open door policy. There was always an open door for different people to be heard. Some people took it up and others just blatantly refused. In response to the current media situation in Grenada, I quite agree with you. The media has that when you step
I
into
think
your
we lost
newsroom,
Margaret. Please proceed.
that you check
Yeah.
that outdoors. You check those viewpoints outdoors, and you're not seeing that. People have sides. People make veiled threats, and to me, that does not do the profession any good in Grenada. It does. It just doesn't. It makes people not trust you. It, nobody takes you seriously, and it damages the profession overall. I don't know right now, how to fix that. Maybe your guests coming on later may have some ideas, but clearly something has to be done. about it, because it doesn't help anybody. There are lots of things that the media should be talking about, questions that they should be asking, and they're not. It's not a political issue. It's a public interest issue, and those are things that they need to really focus on. It's not about your party. It's about your public. And again, it's about informing your public. The only way a democracy can work is by having an informed and educated public. And the media has a key role to play in ensuring that its public is educated and informed so that they can make the right choices when it comes to that.
Alan, I'll try to bring you on here. Again, let me apologize to the viewers. Our connection is very unstable this morning in first world United States. At that, you would think that we have some, really bad internet here. But Alan, just to pick up on that, one of the things I've been hearing since starting the Bubb Report is just uh, the bemoaning of the fact that public discourse seems to have coarsened in many respects. That the kind of public discourse that we had in Grenada in the past no longer obtains. What are your thoughts on that thought process? Yeah, we are not getting Alan at all. So I'm going to bring back Mr. Forrester. Mr. Forrester, let's hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my friend, it is most unfortunate that politics has influenced the media more and more over the years. It is very sad indeed, but it's a reality that we all have to accept. How can we fix this? It is very simple. The politicians need to accept the fact that there is a need for smooth flow of information and a balance in the information that is being provided to the general public. It is not information just for the politicians. It is information for the upliftment and betterment of the society. It may not always go your way. The fact is, the facts need to be presented. And this is why I always, whenever George called to say, Terry, I know I'm late, but can you come on this morning? I said, George, what are we talking about? And he would say, it's an open flow, every and anything. I said, well, I have nothing to hide and I have nothing to lie about. So I am coming. And that has always been my position. And I would present whatever information that I had, which was, as far as I'm concerned, considered as the facts, and present the facts. And George was always welcoming. He presented his side of the story, and I presented my side of the story based on how it was presented to me. And we had a very lively and spirited discussion all the time. And this is what we need to continue to encourage in Grenada. And the media need to bring in the other side of the fence, the other side of the table, that is going to present somewhat now of a balanced story. There is just too much one-sided reporting that is taking place in Grenada, and even some issues that are not even reported. And this is not good for the development of our democracy. It is not good for what is happening that I see, several times. It is creating a stress in society that is not going to foster good for us down the road. We have to try to correct that situation, and let's hope that we can get better at it as time go on.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to bring in Margaret again, but before we get to you, Margaret, John Rowe Alexander, who was a guest here last week, he's making the point that with the government owning controlling interest in several media houses in Grenada, public interest is dead. Media and journalism are a dream. Margaret, what say you?
Well, I guess he has a point to a certain extent, because you're right. People are dependent on government for salaries and that kind of stuff. But I think the other thing I always think about too is probably we need to ask, why do people get into media? And maybe if we can understand that, maybe it could begin setting up a path or a way to solving this problem. I mean, is somebody in there because they are interested? I mean, Kellon, why did you get into media, for example? At the time when I was in media, we were convinced that we were there because we needed to change the world. So the question is, why do people get into media? Is it just a job? If it's simply a job, well, that's it. If you see it as a profession or a commitment because you can make a change in somebody's life, you can make a change in society, then you'd have a different approach to your work. Also, I think, where is the Media Workers Association, for example? There are times when some journalists have problems. They issue a statement on some journalists, and on other issues, they remain silent. You can't pick and choose like that. If something is wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter who the person is. You can't, condemn one action when it happens to one particular individual. And when it happens to somebody else, you sit absolutely quiet on it. You just can't do that. It doesn't help the situation. And, so that's another thing, that MOAG needs to step forward, step up, and be responsible, and really, defend journalism as it ought to be done. You know,
Yeah, no, no, no. You make a good point about, and we will be taking up that discussion with the next panel in the next segment. But with respect uh, to the extent that we have independent journalists, not only in Grenada but throughout the Caribbean, is to me it's becoming a thing of the past. I mean, or perhaps some might say that that was baked into the cake of the way things occurred before. I mean, in speaking with people like Eugenie Mason, who worked under the Gary regime, she would talk about the heavy hand of Sir Eric
right.
in the news business. I mean, you worked in that period, you worked in the revolution. So can you speak to perhaps comparing the current realities with what existed before in the 70s and the 80s in the Grenada Revolution?
So I think, yeah, that has always been an issue in Grenada, in terms of government interference in media. And people have always backed down and do whatever. I mean, there's stories of government officials and stuff writing news releases and sending them out and wanting them to be read that certain way. There were stories that were not covered in other administrations for whatever reason, because it didn't work. We know that there were newspaper operators who, for one reason or another, were shut down because what they were printing, the government did not agree with it. So that has been a history of media in Grenada. Um, but I still think that, if, and this is when it calls for journalists and media practitioners to unite. In unity, there's strength. And if everybody decides that we are not going to deal with this and we're going to protest against it, I think that may be a way that you can stem that flow. I mean, Kellen, you live here in the US, and you know that many times it doesn't matter if something is done, and it doesn't matter which side of the fence media houses are on. Once they perceive that there is a threat to reporting, or any threat to the First Amendment or freedom of the press, you suddenly see people start rallying and issuing statements. If something goes to the court, you would see them, sending in a Friends of the Court brief, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter whether they're on the right or the left, because they fully understand that if they do not defend the principle of freedom, today it's their turn. Today it's my turn. Tomorrow it will be theirs. So, people need to understand that you have to defend a principle. It doesn't matter whether or not you like an individual, or whether you agree with the person, politics, or whatever it is, but you have to defend the principle of freedom of the press, because that is what you are working under. So if when you see one person's right, or you see one media house's right to carry out their duties to report, you need to step in and say, no, this is wrong. It doesn't matter whether or not you agree with that person personally. You have to step that aside and look at the profession. You have to defend the profession. You have to defend the right to freedom of the press. That's a very important right, and you have to defend that. And we have to get people to understand that it's not about defending an individual, it's about defending a principle.
And we have a comment coming in here from Wilbur Thomas, who says the media business changed as well. Newspapers no longer selling, so the survival of some media houses are tied directly to the government profits over the reporting of the news. Ryan Gabon is saying MWAG is not non-governmental, advocating free media. I don't get the point, Mr. Gabon. You might have to phrase that more clearly. John Crow is saying you need to change the world. The need to change the world, I guess, flies out of the window when your belly is empty. Money rules. Okay, so folks, let me bring you in for some final comments. Alan, I'm going to try and get to you first. Alan, our connection is really bad today. I apologize for that.
I'm back.
Final comments from you.
No problem. You can hear me okay? Yes. I
Yes.
think what we have seen as technology has changed over time, that efforts at intimidation of the free media have taken place. I remember, for example, when George had an FM radio station and the NTRC seemed to have a continuing issue with his frequency, 100.5 FM. At one time, they went so far as to say it was interfering with the control, with air traffic control. That, of course, was complete nonsense because his transmitter wasn't powerful enough to go from Grenada down to interfere with anything at Point Saline. And the fact is that there is an assigned frequency 100.5 that a particular radio station is currently using. The other aspect of intimidation had to do with when Al Jazeera did an expose on the sale of passports in certain Caribbean territories. And shortly after that, documentary was aired, some entity put out a video accusing George Grant, George Worm, and Jude Bernard of being unpatriotic. I don't know how an Al Jazeera, an international network interviewing citizens, could be deemed to be unpatriotic, particularly when one has to see the disgraceful spectacle of what I presume to be a recent citizen by reason of having purchased a passport, insulting invited guests, including members of parliament, at a function where he complained and offered his private solutions as to what could be done to increase processing speed at our international airport. Frankly, it shows not just disrespect, but the fact that these people who are purchasing citizenship believe that it is not just the citizenship that they have purchased.
All right. Yes, some very valid points. Now, that is an issue we will be looking into as well. And Mr. Forrest, I will bring you in for some final comments.
Thank you very much, Kellen. Let me say that political dependency over the past 25, 30 years has certainly taken root in Grenada. And it has taken root in media houses, unfortunately. So there is a compromise situation taking place with media practitioners. And as one person indicated, it's all about how much noise your belly is making and what is required in order to quieten that noise. But it's most unfortunate. We are seeing it happening and it is continuing, and something needs to be done in order to calm that situation. But what is even worse is that influential persons and organizations in Grenada, they all have become extremely quiet indeed. Chamber of Commerce, Hotel Association, Employers Federation, you can go down the list, and lots of influential persons and influential organizations are just too quiet. including the churches. They need to speak out on issues that affect the country, on issues that affect individuals. Some persons are being victimized because of statements made publicly, etc., etc. And if we don't take stock of this situation, it's going to hurt this little country terribly. Now, another issue is the Prime Minister's press conferences. You see from time to time a select few media persons who are obviously in line with the government being invited. And if a prime minister is going to address the nation, then in my opinion, all media practitioners need to be invited to such a press conference, not just a select few where he knows what the questions are going to be and that sort of thing. We need to have full transparency, and the people of Grenada need to have a wide understanding as to all the issues and how our leader will respond to those issues. So these are things that we really need to be cognizant about, and Grenadians, influential ones, those not so influential, need to start speaking out about the issues so that we can have a better and stronger democracy as we move forward. We have examples to show to our young people. Let us start showing those examples, because what is happening today, we seem to have lost a vision for this country. We seem to be losing or have lost our leaders in this country. But more importantly, we need to forge a serious vision as to where we want this country to go. And each and every one of us certainly has a role and a part to play in this exercise.
Mr. Forrester, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time for this segment, but these are the conversations that George and I would have all the time, right, about the state of media in Grenada. And certainly, I will do my part here in the diaspora to ensure that whatever I can do to maintain some semblance of balance and independence with respect to the free press in Grenada, I would ensure that I do that. Of course, you know, we are indeed the 16th constituency on matters of the free press, on matters of Grenada in general. So again, I want to take the opportunity to thank Margaret, Alan, and Terry for this segment. Again, I do apologize for some of the bad connection we've been having, but folks, thank you. We will take a break and get to the next segment. Bye-bye. Okay, folks, let me get to the next segment. We should have teed up a clip with Mr. Grant here. Let me see if I can tee that up now. But what we want to do is to just run a slideshow. We want to run a slideshow with memories of the late George Grant. So we will tee that up, and then we will come back to the next segment. Stand by. And welcome back, folks. Those were some images of the late, great George Grant, a mentor and friend of mine. And at this opportunity, we are continuing the conversation on the press and on the media. And I want to bring in a colleague of mine. I still consider her to be a colleague. Linda, it's so good to have you here on the Bubb Report. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, I didn't realize we were somewhere not colleagues anymore. Having sat your
Right,
days at place when I was there, so I thought
right. Yes.
we had
Right.
that bond that cannot
We
be forsaken.
and we still have that bond. For those who don't know, I met my very first job in Grenada was as a reporter with the Grenadian Voice newspaper under the very steely and very strict Clarence Leslie Pear, and that is where I happened to meet Linda Straker, and we worked together at the Voice for many years, and as part of MWAG, and we still continue to collaborate on issues with respect to sourcing stories and things like that. And I'm trying to get Mr. Deputy in here, but it says his device is not connected.
Yeah, he
But
was with
Linda,
me shortly. He said that he's having technical difficulties. There were
okay, all
some
right,
issues within his computer and his phone, so he's still fighting to get it.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
Linda. So what we want to do, today, is that we want to talk about the World Press Freedom, the Reporters Without Borders. I'm sorry, Press Freedom Report. Would that have been from 2020 or 2021?
The
That's the
report that was
2020
launched,
report.
what happens at the first quarter of every year,
Yes.
um, research will be done the previous year. So the 2021
Okay.
release covers 2020.
Okay.
Yes, covers issues in
Okay.
2020.
So
And like with
right.
everything around journalism, COVID has its own appearance there, its advantage and disadvantage. So the
Mhm.
RSF report, the media index, released in the first quarter of 2021, is reflective of the media in the year 2020.
Okay, so it's a 2020
Yeah.
forecast. But Linda, the report does not speak in glowing terms about the state of freedom of the press in Grenada, and certainly the OECS.
Well, let me just make it clear to you and your audience. Since 2005, I have been the RSF correspondent for the OECS. In 2005, so a couple of years later, Barbados was included to my responsibility. So I am the person who would be doing the research, lead research for that. And so what comes out of it is reflective of what is factual with regard to media in the OECS. Because the OECS is a group of small islands, our population do not even meet 1 million. The OECS is put together as one area. So you may find in Grenada it might be a little better than another territory, but when you balance it off, it is reflective of what is happening in the OECS. Because having done that for all these years, we recognize that the OECS has similar challenges. The islands may be small, but they all face similar challenges. So, just for a little background, the research is done with answering some specific types of questions to some specific people and using research of things that are happening. So, in the case of the OECS, what we find that the OECS would have dropped one for the new release. There was one time the OECS was as high as 28 million, that we really had good press freedom with minor challenges. But what has been happening, other countries has been improving, but we in the OECS have just remained stagnant. And so what is happening, it reflectively now we've been minusing one or two over the years. Even the US has, for the past 4 years, from 2016 to 2020, the US would have hit its worst numbers in terms of ranking, but the OECS is constantly going down by either one or two because other countries are improving while we have just remained stable.
Yes, Linda. So, based on the report, now the report says, and I'm quoting from the report. It says that, of course, payment that has always been an issue, compensation, right? But the report goes on to talk about several media outlets are under the direct influence of politicians, especially during election cycles, as officials withdraw state advertising at any time depriving them of income they depend on. Now, what role does that? How did you come up with that metric, if you will, to come to that conclusion? What is happening on the ground? What are the atmospherics on the ground that causes you to come to that conclusion?
Well, it's not caused me to come to that conclusion. It's what is actually factually there. Now, in
Hmm.
the case of Grenada, we have the Grenada Broadcasting Network. The government of the day has shares in that company, in that media house. So that's one, just in Grenada. However, if you look at St. Vincent and St. Kitts and Antigua, there are media houses in these territories that are owned and operated by political parties. So, like as I said earlier, it's a collective um, response that you have. What we see for the OECS ranking is collective. So we may not have a political party owning a media house in Grenada, but you may have definitely St. Vincent have a political party. Political parties have own media house. St. Kitts have it. St. Antigua has it. So if you put all of them together, you find in the majority media houses that are operated by political parties, these political parties tend to always remain in government. And whereas those that are not owned by media houses, it is quite easy for the government to channel its forms of advertising from its political party as well as its own advertising to its own to its organization. I would proudly say to you, Grenada is not reflective great of that, but that is reflective great of other islands.
Well, Linda, I would push back on that. You're saying that political influence is not a major factor in Grenada? I mean,
No, no, no,
folks.
no. I was talking about ownership of media houses by
Well,
political
ownership.
parties.
Well,
Yes.
they may not own political parties, but certainly one may say that persons with political sympathies to the ruling elite in Grenada are part of media houses. I mean, we look at Real FM. We also have Hard Talk Grenada. Obviously, they have their own program that is streamed on different platforms. And we also look at some programming on MTV in Grenada as well, which would reflect the view of the ruling party. So, in as much as they may not own the media networks, to suggest that that they have influence, I mean, they do have influence. Would you not say that?
They do have influence, but I will tell you the greater influence is when it boils down to the bottom line of your finances. In the smaller islands of the OECS in Grenada, the people who really have the influence are those who we do not see. And these are the people who run the advertising. You look at any media house, look at the level of advertising that occur, and that in alone will tell you the story of that media house. So sometimes we try to point finger at the politician. Yes, the politician do play a role. But if the businesses stop advertising, everybody in the media house will either have to take salary cut or be sent home. So the greater influence is not with the political organizations, but it's with the business community. And that is the
Oh,
reality. That's the facts on the ground.
but
Let
Linda,
alone media houses
both.
who had to don't do stories because it will be reflective bad on companies. Companies have actually threatened. And there are stories, yeah, we like to point fingers at politicians, but there are companies in Grenada who even treat media houses worse than politicians with their money. That's the
Mhm.
reality. There are stories that had to be folded up. And if you talk to any media persons who are doing real stories, there are stories that cannot be broadcast, that cannot be done on a media house because you in searching for the other side, instead you get a little note or a call from a lawyer. If you go with that, we put all our advertising. And these are major advertisers. What you're going to do? The management is there to make a decision. So when we speak about press freedom, let's join the business community. Take away the politician for a little bit and see what happens.
No, but Linda, I'm sorry, I would push back on that. Both can be true. One can argue that both politicians and the business community are doing that. Would you not say that?
Both of them are doing it, but it is much more striking when the business community challenge you to it, because the business is what give you the advertising, and if you do not have money to pay your staff, you either have to send them home or give them salary cut. So whereas a politician may come and want to instruct and say what to do, you can easily put them in a corner. But when you look at your bottom line and you realize, if I do not do, I will, it may put me to the point of having to shut down. A decision, the management makes a decision. And when the management makes a decision, the reporters now have to work around the management decision. Reporters are workers like anybody else. And if your management say, well, this is not of interest, we are not going to cover that, the reporter cannot go beyond the management instructions. And that's the reality. So when we speak about press freedom, the influence of politicians and the business community is very, very strong. And let us not put them aside. They work together.
Okay, so Linda, the other part of the report talks about self-censorship. When we say self-censorship, can you give some context to that, please?
Again, it is linked to the whole issue of media, because you work in an environment where you know, if you pursue a certain angle of a story, it may lead to your management pulling you in because the advertiser is offended. You then say, you make a personal decision. I'm not going to do that story because I may stand to lose my job. You look at the bottom line, you said, you have to make a personal decision. And that's where self censorship comes in. Because in our region, there is no organization that funds heavy grants to journalists who will operate independently to pursue certain matters. We don't see that happening easily. So you have situations of freelance or independent contractors, as some of them are called different names. You can apply for grants and you can pursue. In our region, this is not easily available. As a matter of fact, some of it, a little bit, has been opening up every now and then, but it is not something mainstream. Because when you do, you have to go through a tedious process. So yes, I like the people saying, "Oh, we want to see more done," but media workers have limitations within their own self, and
Okay,
that's
so
the reality.
Linda, again, I have critiqued and I will continue to critique the lack of independence in media in Grenada. I will continue to do that.
It's your right,
Of
and it's your
course,
observation.
well, and just to piggyback on the report, the report makes a very good case for the current state of media in the country, in Grenada and other OECS countries. And so one of the questions that I ask myself is, um, what does that mean for the future of independent journalism? Right? What does it mean when reporting has to be based on either, as you say, corporate interest? I believe it's much more balanced on the side of political interest because politicians also advertise in media houses. But what does it say about the future with respect to independent media in the region, and what can we do about it?
I will tell you something, Calvin. In 2004, I did not experience Hurricane Ivan here. And the reason for that, I was one of the journalists selected to engage in a program under the United Nations that gave me a really good experience for a couple of months. And when I came back to Grenada and I saw the state that we were in, believe it or not, one of the first thing I did, I had a training program. And there are a couple of persons who stayed in that, who participated in the training, who are still in working in media houses today. As a matter of fact, I would have had two since then. What is needed? We have a situation where, because of low salaries, and that is the reality, a lot of the journalists who engage in further education, for the education attainment and professional development, leave the profession and go to work doing corporate work. So what we find happening is a constant turnover of younger persons coming into the media, and younger persons are coming in without proper training. And training is really a crucial issue in our region, not just Grenada, in the region. So let me give you an example so we can see what the future holds. We have a situation where for the past two election terms, one political party would have won all the seats in the parliament. In terms of information, when we are observing World Press Freedom Day tomorrow, in terms of information disseminating to the media, I would have come from an era when there was opposition in parliament. And so we would have seen opposition filing questions and getting answers. We have a group of journalists in Grenada who are just getting to understand the power of the opposition in parliament, as an example. They have started working, and in some cases, chain profession, where we have one political party in our parliament, in the House of Representatives. Just imagine for a moment, journalists thinking that what you hear in the House of Representatives is the only piece of information you should work with. And that should tell the story what could happen just using our parliament for the future. If this group of journalists were never exposed as to what happened in our parliament when there is an opposition, that is where information come out. None of the parties that were going to, the members were going to ask a question when they all belong to the same party. And the people who know me very well, they will always know what I say about having just one party in our parliament. It is not a good thing for democracy. And so we have a group of journalists who are getting that type of observation and type of training, that type of working environment. They stay in that too long, they would think that is the way to go, but that is not the way to go. So what the future holds, the journalists need to go and educate themselves. The journalists now, and a conscious decision have to be made to remain in it if you want to stay in it. I could have leave it and gone to, because you can get bigger money when you move to corporate public relations. It is good, but those of us who decide to remain in it, it's a conscious decision.
To the Constitution. I know that you also have an election coming up. So could you, the date or anything, but could you give us a sense?
Well, Kelon, I am the treasurer of the association. So I can tell you, up to 2 weeks ago, well, no, going back from December, that first initial draft of amending our constitution was presented, and then it was given some time. Of May, yes, the 22nd of May, we should be having a meeting where a new executive will be elected in accordance with that new constitution. That's what I know is going to happen in a couple of days. 22nd of May. Today is already the 2nd of May.
Would you be offering yourself as the president of MWAG, Linda?
No, this is something members have to do.
Okay.
That's something for the members. What I can tell you, maybe I can, for those who are in Grenada who are listening, and for you, there will be new categories of membership. And so I think a person like you would most likely be able now to be a member, but there might be some limitation in terms of your voting and so forth. The members who are in locally, I would still encourage person to pay their membership dues, because as it stands right now, not quite a lot of persons are qualified, are financial to vote. And one of the things I also want you to know, and persons who are there, okay, Media Workers Association is a professional body. It's a gathering of professionals. People can change profession from time to time. People can continue work indirectly with the profession. But there are persons who are working in the profession who have decided, I do not wish to be a member of this association. And the question always comes up, if you do not wish to be a member, do we have to advocate on your behalf?
Right. That is a
Do we
good point,
advocate for
because
our member, or do we advocate for persons who are in the profession? Because a lot of the persons who we think are in trouble and are always running into issues, they are not members of the association. They don't pay a membership. They were never part of it. And we have approached them. I personally have approached some who wish not to be part of this thing. So then when issues arrive, do we as an organization has a duty to advocate on their behalf? This is an answer I would like somebody to give, but there can be varying opinion on it. And so I just wanted some people to know out there, not everyone who working in Grenada is a member of the Media Workers Association who are working in the media. Not everyone who are working in the media wish to be part of the association. And so those who are looking from afar, and you may not know that, whenever you want to complain about MWAG and MWAG and MWAG, first find out whether or not this person is a financial member or an observer member or just a member of MWAG.
Okay, Linda, this is a conversation that we need to continue, and we have these conversations all the time. And
Yes.
I am not shy about expressing my views with respect to the state of media in Grenada, but I am not going to be an armchair pundit. Now that I'm done with school, I would offer whatever support, training, and development opportunities that I can offer to the media, with the understanding that it ought to be about professional development, balance, and independence. Again, balance and independence. We really need that in our media. So Linda Straker, thank you so much, and I look forward to having you again. Of course, when the new executive of MWAG is elected, we'd love to have them here on the Bubb Report as well to continue this conversation.
Thank you very much, and do have a very productive week.
Thank you. You as well. All right. So, folks, that was Miss Linda Straker, who is the current treasurer of the Media Workers Association of Grenada. We will take a break and we will come back with our segment on labor relations, the future of the labor relations in the Eastern Caribbean and English speaking Caribbean. We do have Mr. Watson Duke who will be joining us from Tobago, and we also have Mr. Frankson Marshall from Grenada who would be kicking us off in the next segment. Stand by, folks. We'll be right back.
Will turn the British Empire upside down. I'm a born Motlerite. I am 94 years of age. So I grew up. He win, you know, he have a time he win. But you know, he's a man that he didn't joke and he was very rude, you know. He didn't take it stupid by that.
The conditions of the poor Indians and Negroes in sugar and oil respectively was nothing short of subhuman. It was clear.
Certainly was one of the foremost trade unionists in the Caribbean. And now I want to bring in the future, really what I see as the future of the labor movement in the Caribbean. You young men would have, you are the president of the public sector.
Morning, brother.
Yes, you are the organized labor in this period in the Caribbean. What are not acceding to you?
Dwindling, you have to start at that point in time. And so we would have recognized that the dawn of was, we recognize where we were so they can be saved. And I've become that man. I've been successful, Services Association, and the preface. A lot of times, my people would think the union have fought against me, sometimes continuously, sometimes at the moment of election. And one thing they recognize is that I am like Bruce Willis, I die hard. You have to have that survivor instinct in you if you're going to teach your members how to survive and how to believe in something. You must become the emblem of that thing, the symbol of that thing. You must become the life of that thing. So that's one thing. You must become a personality that people want to follow. That's one. All right. And it's not the talk personality. So you have to become a doer of your word, a believer in your word, and not just a speaker of the word. That's the first point I want to make. The next point I want to make is that you have to reinvent your union. The union cannot be static. Gone were the days when people just believe what you say and okay, you said you're going to protect us, you're going to fight for us. Now again, people want to feel that the union is really an integral part of their life. And so we have been busy trying to modernize our union in that we want to now offer to our members a medical facility. It will be the first union in the Caribbean to offer a medical facility to its members. So we are busy forming that. The plans have been drawn. We're talking to several stakeholders, and that should commence perhaps in a 3 months' time. The place has already been owned by us. It's just the building out of the area now, and we're going to offer members the general practitioner service. We're going to offer members things like ENT, minor surgery procedures, eye specialists, dental specialists, the basic things, even a pharmacy. So we are forming that for our members because a lot of our members, they have health challenges, and at the end of the day, when they go to the doctor and they have to pay all that money in Trinidad and Tobago, it's 300 TT, which may be like maybe about 100 EC, maybe 100 EC. All right. When you have to pay that amount of money, it diminishes the disposable income that you have, and that's another point. It's 2 points in one. One, you have to start speaking to the needs of the members. You have to start studying it, just as how YouTube, Facebook, and all of these shops you go online. They look at your pattern, they study it, and they tailor make to suit you. We need to study our members. Members want to have more benefits from the union, and they want to have more disposable income, not just from the government. So we have found a way to speak to the needs of our members in so far as health facility, and that will also allow them to have more disposable income. Because instead of spending 100% upfront and waiting for a rebate from the insurance, what you spend is a minuscule amount, and there's no rebate. That money you have for more, well, to dispose of as you see fit. We also going into the area of education. We have organized what is called the PSA Trading Academy, where we are now producing books. And we have written one of the books, which is first in the Trinidad and Tobago, which is employment law regarding public service. It's still a real book, what we call a bespoke book. And we started the first course, I think it was the year before COVID came. And that was a practical course where I have one of my colleagues who is a resident of England, and she has a master's in employment law. She came and she taught the course. Persons were excited about it. So we are building our human resources within the union to treat, so they can learn how to treat specifically with the things of the union and not just general trade union. You have to cut like a surgeon. You have to be a specialist. The man that deals with cosmetic surgery, he do not produce life, he don't perform life-saving surgery. He's a specialist in cosmetic surgery. And in life-performing surgery, he may not be a specialist in cosmetic surgery. So we are saying, once you're working with us, we want you to specialize in what we are doing. And so we're training people. The other area I want to just touch on again, just to bring members in, is the area of so we have training, we have media. We recognize that the union is having a difficult time trying to find a voice outside. So you speak and they misrepresent what you say, and you get bad name for it. So you have to create your own media space. We have created that PSA Media, or the PSA platform, or Platform PSA, which we are now trying to rebrand again and get up and running. So we have been doing our stuff. I can tell you the membership began to grow for once again.
Mr. Marshall, let me bring you in here. My fellow Presentation College alumni brother. I was ahead of you by a couple of years, but it's. I'm sure Brother Matthias and Brother Robert would be very pleased with the route you have taken into trade unionism. But I'm going to ask you the same question. Yes, I'm going to ask you the same question. Staying relevant and innovating in this period, what is the GUT doing?
So good morning to your listeners, and good morning to you, Calon. I think it would be remiss of me as a fellow Grenadian and also as a PBC boy to not commend you on your recent achievement of successfully defending your dissertation. So congratulations, Dr. Bob.
Thank you.
Now, the importance of unions and ensuring their sustenance can be done in a number of ways. One of the first things that needs to happen is that workers, there's something called a temporal blindness. That's the phrase I'm using. And there are a number of things and benefits and rights that workers have today which are taken for granted. The idea of an 8-hour work week is taken for granted now, but that was actually an 8-hour work day taken for granted now, but that actually came in the late 19th century. The idea of weekends. The worker today does not really understand that the privileges they enjoy were fought for by leaders before them. In the Grenada Union of Teachers in 1956, there was a strike action because laborers were making more monies, earning greater salaries than teachers in the classroom. At one point in time, it was customary in Grenada that if a female teacher becomes pregnant, she is expected to exit the service. But today we have maternity leave. So I think one of the first things that unions need to do is to ensure that the workers today understand the importance of unions. There is a direct correlation between union membership and standard of living. It is not by chance that in the United States of America today, the inequality gap has been widening. This is not an accident. This is because of reduction in union membership. A most recent example of that would have been the defeat of the union members of Alabama in their efforts to unionize workers of an Amazon warehouse. And that is the first challenge. For a union to remain relevant, it must be topical. And the people to whom it serves, they must understand its reason why it's there. Secondly, leadership has to change. And the ways in which we got out to our members before are different now. In your segment previous, Ms. Straker would have identified that one of the challenges that media houses have is that businesses may be against a certain story coming out. And that is the influence on the media. So it is a bit fortunate that unions have their own independent avenues and platforms, the Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter, the emails. And unions need to use these avenues to get out to their members, to get the message out. Because if the report discussed prior is anything to go by, media objectivity in the Caribbean, especially in the Eastern Caribbean islands, it's challenging to exist. So unions have to find a way to get their message out. And that's for two reasons. One, in small insular communities like ours, very often topics get reduced to something binary, either you're for or against. So if you're a public sector worker union and you are negotiating for salaries or benefits, one of the easiest things that the government of the day can do is frame it as in them against us. There are very few issues in the world which are just black or white. So unions have to find their own way of getting their message out because of that. Secondly, and this is extremely important, unions need to find their own way of breaking down macro philosophy and economics down to the common man. So if a business, a bank, is saying, well, we cannot afford this raise because it will cost the bank $10 million. It is now up to the union to say, well, they are saying that, but based on our information, those numbers are incorrect. As a matter of fact, this $10 million that are being claimed would only cost one worker an average of $100. In various ways of getting out to members and the public at large, unions can help build their case and ensure relevance and that they are topical.
Mr. Duke, I'm going to bring you in Trinidad and Tobago, excuse me, with respect to your demands. And so my question is, out of war, Mr. Duke?
This trade union thing for me is a practical thing. It's part of my DNA. And you become the man that you want to be because the man that you want to be lies within you. It may sound philosophical, but for me, it's just a reality. Because I never set out to become one of the greater trade unions in my country. I never set out to do that. For me, I just wanted to get the work done. I wanted to live the basic life of my members. And I said about doing my job very hard without fear or favor. And speaking in a way, as my dear brother Marshall would have said, that the workers would understand. It's very, very important. So when I speak, I could say raw. Sometimes it's vernacular. Sometimes I use phrases that would make them laugh. But I've become a man that even the politicians fear because I've also got involved in politics, as you may know. Because I also recognize that for the trade unions to survive, we must have a seat around the table. We must have a seat around the table, which is around the boardroom, around the cabinet, and in the parliament, And so I formed my own party, which is a weird thing to do. I formed my own political organization and I challenged the government and I've beaten the government. I'm now a legitimate politician, all right, with constituencies and etc. etc. One day I may become the prime minister. But we must make a need for us to become, and our members doesn't just want us to fight. They want us to become the crafters of legislation. We must one day be able to say to them, we are going to fix this by going into the parliament and beg. Too many trade unionists have found themselves on the seat of the beast. The very person that they hate, the very thing they hate, they have found themselves into it, which means they are on the lower rung of the ladder to be used as a stepping stone for politicians. We don't want no slice of the cake. We don't even want the whole cake, we want the whole factory. We must run the thing because it is our members who are running society. For instance, I represent the Public Services Association that represents some 80,000 people in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, we're talking about every single public service area, we are there. For put your eyes closed, we are there. We are there in forensic, we are there in the hospital, we are there right through. And so if we are the ones who are guiding society, I think the government has to listen to us. Because at the end of the day, we are the government, they are the executive, but the people, we are the one who does the governance.
Mr. Marshall, I'll bring you in. I want you to react to what Mr. Duke just said. Mr. Marshall.
Yes, I am here.
Yes, go ahead.
That is a very interesting comment. As a matter of fact, at our recent conference, the featured speaker, Dr. Graves, alluded to union placing themselves in an advantageous place in politics in order to advocate on behalf of their members. The thing is that in the Caribbean, the labor movement, the political movement, and the independence movement are invariably intertwined. In Grenada here, the father of our independence, Eric Matthew Gavey, for all of his faults later on, was a son of the trade union movement. Now, personally, I share similar sentiments with Brother Duke. It is one thing to knock on the door from the outside and to urge, to fight for your workers. But I think it is a whole other aspect, a whole other different dynamic to be able to make the rules from the inside. And I think that to really demonstrate care for your workers, to see them progress, to see the standard of living improve for all workers within the country, the laws must reflect that care and concern. One way is through industrial action, through negotiations, but I think a lot more can be gotten done from inside a cabinet or a legislative room. So I think Brother Duke is on point with his assertions there.
Okay, so Mr. Duke, I will get to you. Obviously, this is a non-trade union related matter here. This has to do with the protracted issues with respect to what is happening at the Tobago House of Assembly. Obviously, to the pair that we are at a stalemate now with negotiations which appear to be acrimonious. And I know that you guys are currently under lockdown in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the spike in COVID cases. So it would appear that your party offered a proposal, a power sharing proposal that the ruling government didn't appear to want to accept. So is it a case now that you will be going back to the polls soon?
We wish we can. We wish we can. We wish they would. The reality is that no one wants to give up power, and power is seldom ceded diplomatically. Sometimes it involves bloodshed, sometimes it involves a riot, because no man knows how hot it is in the kitchen unless you are in the kitchen. Most of those who are holding on to power under the People's National Movement, they don't know what it is to go hungry. They don't know what it is to have a whole lot of education, more degrees than a thermometer, and can't find a job. They don't know what it is to have a leak in your roof and have the rain coming down and there's nothing you could do about it. They don't know those things. They have been living good. They have been having more than a tongue could wish or an eyes can see. So they are pretty much settled in continuing that type of governance, while the government in Trinidad, plays the role of an ignorant government. They don't know what's taking place and they don't know how to solve it. But there are a group of people in Tobago who are no longer willing to put up with the excuse. They want elections now. They want it now. And I wish that those people will hold their hand, that they will restrain their desire, but I can't control that. And I'm hoping that this, which starts off as a discussion around the table, something that's we try to take to a negotiation stage, doesn't end in violence. Because man will always seek to have a place where he can express himself and have his views heard. Right now, Tobago is being governed undemocratically by a group of people, the PNM, without any type of legislation. They are spending millions and millions of dollars, and there is no accountability. They do not submit a monthly budget. We don't know who they are engaging. They are just spending the money as if it was their money, thus committing future generations to a life of torment and a life where they will just be in perpetual expense, and that's not good enough. So we are calling for an early election. We're calling for it now, and we're hoping that those who are listening would send that to the appropriate personnel, which is the PNM, who have been spoiling and destroying the country.
Well, Mr. Duke, certainly the PNM might have a different perspective to that, but we do want to invite yourself back and the other councillors.
Please.
Now that I have your attention, I actually track you down through a media colleague of mine at the Guardian in Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you. But I want to conclude this discussion on struggles in Grenada. That there is a 4% struggle with the teachers. I believe in Trinidad and Tobago. Your union is also in another protracted struggle as well. So you are dealing, as I said before, you are really coming up against intransigent government. In the case of Grenada, at least the government is committing, Mr. Marshall, to paying the 4%. Certainly not on your timeline, according to the leadership. But I know that, Mr. Marshall, you had a meeting last week with the negotiating team. What was the outcome of that?
Well, the latest correspondence we have gotten from the Labour Commissioner, Dr. Cyrus Griffith, is that he has declared deadlock between the parties and that he is referring the matter to the Labour Commissioner, who is a member of Parliament, for his adjudication, so we may go through a process of mediation. The issue here is, Kellon, that the teachers of Grenada are very understanding people. And very often when we are engaged in struggles, there is the rallying cry from members of the other side. What about the children? We love our children. The position of the union is as follows. Decisions must be agreed to. If you and I have an agreement, Brother Bob, and there are to be changes to that agreement, we must agree on that change. And we are concerned that while on one side the government indicates that they are unable to make the payment and so forth, in other quarters we are seeing taxpayers' monies are being spent and invested elsewhere. And our concern is that, is it a matter of inability to pay or an unwillingness to pay? And teachers must be respected. The trade union movement in Grenada started with the Grenada Union of Teachers on June 20th, 1913. The Grenada Union of Teachers is the third oldest union in the Caribbean. We are committed to nation building. The greatest resource that Grenada has is the children of this country, the people of this country, because we have not found the oil as yet. And the group of people who add value to Grenadians, to these children, to each other, it's the teachers. We developed Grenada's greatest resource. And as such, at the very least, we should be met with respect. And that is why we continue to pursue this struggle. The teachers of Grenada would have signed agreement through the Grenada Union of Teachers with government on an increase due January 31st, 2021. And that has not been fulfilled as yet. Justice delayed is thus justice denied. And this justice has been delayed end of January, the end of February, the end of March, and April has just gone. So we have been suffering 4 months of direct injustice by the non-payment of that 4%. We are committed to a resolution to this struggle. We are committed to having relations go back to a more amicable manner, if I may use that word. But respect must be reciprocal. And in the same way, what is due unto Caesar must be paid unto Caesar. And what is due unto teachers must be paid unto teachers as well. Lastly, I must comment that for the trade union movement and teachers as well, it is important to note what happens in a country in a state of emergency. Rights are not only there when it is convenient. Rights are most important in situations of struggle. And the challenges brought on by COVID-19 has shown that there have been efforts by many to erode the rights of Grenadians or go back on agreements under the banner of COVID-19. Rights are not favors. And in this case, the teachers are standing up for their rights, for the benefits already agreed to. And we will persist, we will struggle, solidarity forever. And I think my brother, Mr. Duke, can understand that last phrase.
Mr. Duke?
That's the
Yes, if solidarity forever is the clarion call here, based on what Mr. Marshall.
Yes. I must say,
so
I love
go
the
ahead.
views shared by my comrade there. I admire those views. Those are the views that I would have espoused myself had I been in your shoes. And keep on going, my brother. I love Grenada very much. Sometimes I think I'm a Grenadian. When I come there, I feel so much at home when I come to Grenada. All right? So
Well,
keep
I
trying
mean,
to fly
you know, they say half of Trinidad and Tobago is Grenada. You know, they say that. So
Well, indeed, maybe. One could never tell.
yeah, but Mr. Duke, I'll get to you. What are some of the current struggles in Grenada? As I said, with the 4%, there is also the pension issue. But in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, what current struggle is your union waging?
Well, we have been able to negotiate very wisely and got good increases, but the government, they are backing out of honoring what they have agreed to. For instance, in my case, we represent the National Insurance Board workers, which is the workers that deal with NIS, etc. And those workers would have signed off for 9%, and the government is saying that they can't pay it. And so we now have to engage in a struggle to force them to pay it, because they have signed off for it and there is money available for it, but the government is choosing not to pay. We also have the same situation like that in the port, where the port workers are also in a struggle. So they have signed off, I think it's a 14%, and the government doesn't want to pay. The government agrees to pay 14%, then say they cannot pay 14%. They agree to pay 9%, and then come and say they don't want to pay. And on the other hand, they want to freeze salaries. On the other hand, they want to freeze promotions and appointments. On the other hand, they also want to send workers home, in particular, workers from the Water and Sewage Authority, which may be likened to your water company. They are saying that they want to fire everybody and start a fresh company over in 3 years. But there's a timeline by which they intend to go about doing that. So a lot of fight is here, and we are equal to all of them. It was only Friday I met with the Minister of Finance, and I told him in no uncertain terms to put a freeze on job loss, put a freeze on that, freeze that, ensure that no one lose his or her job within the financial year, which ends on 30th of September 2021. So we have been meeting our struggles head on. The government is simply trying to water down and waste the union down and trying to make the union look unreasonable, as they do in all countries. But I want to say to my brother Frankson, that hold your head high, and the work that we are doing is likened to the work of Jesus Christ. We are doing it unto the least of these, my brethren. And as long as we do it to the least of these, my brethren, we are doing it unto God himself. So do it faithfully. Do it without murmur, without complaining, and put your life on the line. for those you are leading.
Thank you, brother. My sentiments to you as well. Solidarity forever, and the struggle will continue.
Definitely.
All right, a Sunday sermon there from Mr. Duke. Mr. Duke, any relation to Cindy Duke, Dr. Cindy Duke?
Yes, those are my cousins. Cindy Duke, Winston Duke from Wakanda. Those are my cousins. A streak of
Okay.
greatness.
Where is that? Where in Tobago is that?
Well, it's not Tobago. Well, we are from the countryside, the eastern side. So I'm
On the
from
eastern side.
Roxborough, and Cindy
Yes.
Duke and Winston Duke, they are from Argyle. Both are almost the same territory, Roxborough, Argyle. So almost the same territory. One flows into the next.
I've had the chance to visit Tobago on a few cool down fets after Carnival, so
Right,
I'm very familiar. I definitely will. And I will be following up with you again, sir, with respect to conversations on the THA deadlock. We have also been trying to get PNM representatives. We have not been so lucky thus far, but it is a conversation that needs to be had with respect to the constitutionality of the current situation in Trinidad and Tobago. So, trade union brothers, let me thank you again for appearing on the Bubb Report today. This was certainly a very important discussion that we will continue to have. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back for the final segment of the day, which will be a conversation around free speech and the Constitution in Grenada. Stand by.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
It is with a deep sense of appreciation and concern that TAU recognize and applaud all frontline workers who, on a daily basis, risk not only their health, but their lives and that of their family and loved ones. These workers have and continue to demonstrate their commitment to the health of the citizens of this country. They continue to demonstrate a passion for taking care of the least amongst us. They continue to demonstrate a passion for saving lives.
I have observed for the past 20 years my comrades in the public service, after giving 30 years of blood, sweat, and tears, sometimes more, to the nation, have to face a depressing and shameful exit as they have nothing to get when they leave. How sad. Meanwhile, politicians are rewarded handsomely after 8 years with a full pension and a periodic gratuity. Is this fair? They have withheld our 4%. They have incarcerated our pensions. And now they are attempting to detain our leaders. My friends, this abuse must stop.
From since I was a young adult, and every year that I've been in Grenada, whether as a private citizen or a public official, I have attended each and every Labor Day, May Day celebration, each and every one of them. For me, this is not just an opportunity to show solidarity with the movement. Equally importantly, it is also an opportunity to commune with a people that have been the greatest inspiration to some of my roles in my adult life.
Okay, welcome back, folks. We will be getting straight into our final segment of the day, in which we'll be having a conversation on perceptions of political victimization at points when citizens speak out on issues that affect the country. And I want to begin, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Williams, AJ Williams there of the Hotspot establishment in Grenada, who spoke on this matter. Richie Maitland, who is a constitutional attorney, I want to thank him. He has fatherhood responsibilities, so I want to thank him for taking the time to join us. And Mr. Tevin Andrews of the National Democratic Congress. We did invite Honorable Oliver Joseph of the New National Party, because here it is important for us to get all sides of the story. but Mr. Oliver Joseph had to cancel on the last minute. But of course, they're always welcome here on the Bubb Report. But before I go into the segment, we actually sent out a snap survey, a snap poll to ask this question about perceptions of political victimization in Grenada. So I'm going to share that poll right now. And so the first question was, me, my family members, or a close friend has been the actual or perceived victim of political victimization in Grenada. 95% of respondents said yes, whereas 80% of respondents said no. So we have that. And of course, the second question was, neither me nor any family member or close friend has been the actual or perceived victim of political victimization in Grenada. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome our guests here. And I see Mr. Depredin is also joining us. Maybe he can chime in later. But Mr. Andrews of the NDC, thank you. Mr. Williams, Hotspot, thank you so much, sir, for coming on at this very last minute. And so I thank you. And Richie, thank you for taking time off your busy schedule today to join us for this very important conversation. And just to back up a little bit, we wanted to have this conversation against the backdrop of World Press Freedom Day, which is tomorrow, but also against the backdrop of conversations that were had with respect to Miss Cedar Charles of St. Patrick's. She's an avid social commentator and activist who sort of intimated that she had to make a choice between her ability to speak out on the issues or to keep her job. Again, we do not have all of the facts in the matter. We did invite her to appear on the Bubb Report. She declined as well for full transparency, but we certainly want to get into the conversation. And I would open the floor. With you, Mr. Williams, I would start with you. A couple of weeks ago on Facebook, you suggested that there is political victimization in Grenada when people speak out on issues. Do you think there is any truth to that claim, and what kind of evidence can you provide to that?
Let me just say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today.
Yes, sir.
On your program. But before we get into this, let me just say this, right? We have no opposition here in Grenada, right? We have no opposition.
The leader of the opposition would disagree. We have Tobias Clement, who is the official leader of the opposition. Are you saying that he's not effective?
In my opinion, it's a dead opposition, right?
Okay.
And he was part of the NMP.
Okay.
You see, and this is a problem. The problem that I have, right, is like one day where you are when you and this guy are friends, you are talking good about him. Another day you unfollow it, you speak bad about him. So what can we really believe? So for me, I cannot believe anything from Tobias because he was part of the regiment. So my thing is this: we have no opposition here, and the only voice you have is a voice of the people. Now, what you see happening is that all over, the sector, all over Grenada, in terms of calypsos, in terms of just name it, people are scared to speak anything against the NMP. And I'm saying this should be wrong, or this is wrong, right? We should be able to speak our mind, say how we feel on certain things, right? And be able to have free speech in Grenada without any victimization. And I'm saying, you are from the NMP, you are from the NDC, you should be able to speak your mind without anyone or without any fear. Now, and when we are giving this privilege to the parties, we are creating a country of yes men. And I'm telling you, I am not a yes man, and I refuse to be in a country of yes men. No, I never voted for the NDC yet. I only voted for an MP. And points that I will defend with other parties against the NMP. I am seeing I have to shut my mouth up. So I'm saying I am vocal on this point because Keith said no new taxes and all sort of things, and I was for it. But when he came into power, I'm seeing, all these things that he was saying, it has not been fulfilled. So I am not a yes man. I will speak about it and against it. One of my best friends in politics or in the NMP is a lady called Clyde Modest, and we are very good. And I told Dr. Modest, listen to me, I am someone, I speak up, right? If I see injustice is being taking place, I will speak up. If I'm seeing, you all are playing us, sorry, I will speak up, and that's me. some people may take it to be, you know what, Andy's a NDC or an anti-NNP. You can say what you want. I'm Grenadian. And if I'm seeing something that is being, you know, if I'm seeing injustice, I will speak against it. And last point on this matter, right? I'm seeing people like Joel Greenwich and Ashida and speaking up. I'm seeing young men like Tevin taking part in politics. And I'm proud of that because we need these people to be more involved in Grenadian politics. It's like when you look around, it's only the old men you are seeing around. But we need the new breed. We need young people to stand up. And if you are telling us to go to university, SGU, and all these places, and giving us all these opportunities, and when we are ready to speak up, you are only shutting us down. It doesn't make any sense. So I will support Tevin. I will support Ashida. I will support Joel to the fullest, to the last cent I have, because I want these people's voice to be heard. They are the future of Grenada and Grenadian politics. So that's my view on it.
And Richie, let me bring you in here. Now, with respect to the Constitution, I mean, the Constitution is unimpeachable on that question of free speech and freedom of conscience, right? So whenever I hear, accusations lobbed against whether it's the NDC or the NNP administration, whatever administration of the day, I ask myself the question, why don't people take constitutional remedies to be able to address these concerns that they might be having? You need to unmute your mic, Richie. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right. So the Grenadian Constitution, specifically sections 9011, assert rights which are all more or less related to freedom of expression. So freedom of expression expressly, as well as freedom of conscience, etc., which includes the right to receive and share information. But if it is you are to bring a constitutional claim saying that one of those rights has been infringed, which every Grenadian is entitled to do, provided that the alleged violator is a government institution, then there becomes the issue of evidence. So just as a case in point, let's use the issue of Casida. Ashida is her name?
Ashida Charles, yes.
When Newman I know as a social media handle.
That is her pseudonym, which is Nevea Newman, I believe, yes.
Right. So one of the assertions is that the persons within the party or government would have reached out to employers, and through that medium is seeking to stifle her. But it becomes a matter of proof. So if there is in fact evidence that the meeting that she had with management was prompted by the government, a government institution, a statutory body, a specific person, then certainly that claim can be made, and our courts, as the guardians of the Constitution and the rights therein, would be entitled to provide some form of redress. But in that case, I don't know how much evidence there is, and that is often the problem with such cases in Grenada. The country is very small. The reality is, if you politically antagonize the powers that be at the time, it's quite easy to be reached in the context of Grenada, 133 square miles big and 100,000 people. But what often prevents such cases from being brought is that the evidence isn't substantive enough. There isn't a cause-effect relationship that can sufficiently be established, and that's the problem, because a lot of people will tell you they know, and that the evidence is anecdotal. They hear and they know, but in the absence of people actually being able to speak, and in the absence of evidence linking the alleged acts of victimization to the government or state body, then it doesn't make a sense bringing a case, and I think that has been the issue.
So there is plausible deniability there on the part of the state.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And so let me go further on this. I mean, you hear claims, and again, all of this is anecdotal, right? You hear claims that the state would use the power of their purse, the power of the public purse, to deny advertising dollars, or to deny certain financial opportunities for different things. I mean, I mean, there isn't anything in law that can really prevent the state from using their influence in doing those things, right?
Well, no, there is something in law that can prevent the state from doing that. So, under the large rubric of public law, we have constitutional law, which concerns, as the name implies, the Constitution, the rights therein. And there's a clause in there that allows persons, as I indicated, to hold the government to account through the medium of the courts for alleged breaches of constitutional rights. And there's a cousin to that process, which is called judicial review, which allows persons who are impacted by a particular decision of government to go to the court to say, I'm asking the court to review this particular decision, and I'm seeing that it is illegal or arbitrary, or they considered things that they were not supposed to consider, like the fact that someone's mother might be NDC, or they didn't consider things that they were supposed to consider, and the court has powers to then quash a decision and remit it back to a particular tribunal with directives or other powers. They can award the person damages. So there is a process. There is, in fact, a process. I think what is similarly difficult is the issue of evidence. Unless we have whistleblowers, unless you have persons who might fall out with the administration and come out and say, yes, I had this conversation and put it on affidavit, and this is what was told to me by XYZ to do, and that is why I did it, then your case really wouldn't have sufficient evidence to succeed. And just bearing in mind that legal fees are expensive, the court process can be arduous. So those things often just deter people from even bothering to fight up with it, as you see.
Yeah, and Cassandra Mitchell makes a very valid point here. She says access to the court isn't as easy as some of you attorneys make it seem. How many victims have the resources to do so? How many attorneys are willing to offer pro bono services? Which goes to the point. But I want to bring in, on the political side of things here, Mr. Tevin Andrew of the National Democratic Congress. Mr. Tevin, I believe this is your first appearance on the Bubb Report. So welcome to you, sir.
Indeed, and thank you very much for inviting me on your program. Wonderful program. And of course, congratulations, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And of course, Brother Richie, welcome to the Daddy's Club. And Brother Hotspot, I'm hoping you'll come soon.
Yeah, so
if you're not there as yet.
I have a friend taking the baby around on a walk outside because he was just balling in the car. So
I understand. I understand. No, I understand.
Maybe I should bring you guys back for a Father's Day segment.
Why not? Brother Bob, victimization in this country and around the world is something that is real. And in Grenada, it is unacceptable. There are lots of victimization taking place in Grenada, as Brother Andy pointed out. And as my good friend, Brother Maitland pointed out, in some cases, people are not willing to come forward. And in order to address the matter, people must be willing to come forward. The problem is with that, when I look at Miss Gemma Bean Thomas, for instance, who was victimized, because victimization doesn't only mean publicly speaking out and government decide to squeeze you. There are different forms of victimization. And no doubt that Miss Gemma Bean Thomas was victimized. And of course, she did the right thing by going to the courts and so on. But up to this day, the government of Grenada has not, do what the court has asked them to do. She has won a case, but have not followed, but the government of Grenada have not followed through with the court's order. So when people see that, they say, well, why is the sense going to court? And as my good friend Cassandra pointed out, there are times the cost involved in accessing the courts is not as easy as it seems. So when I look at public servants in Grenada that the government of the day perceived, this NNP government perceived to be supporters of the National Democratic Congress that are being victimized. I recall Javon Williams, who is a well-known public officer, permanent secretary, that has been victimized. I know of Rachel Roberts. I know of Mr. Brian Grimes and many others that are being victimized because they are perceived to be supporters of the NDC, or they don't support government's actions or speak up against government. And it's unfortunate. It is unacceptable. And this I believe this is things that needs to stop. We encourage people to speak up against it. And I'm happy for this sort of dialogue, this sort of discussion, so that we can bring light to the situation and encourage people to speak up against victimization. And I'm hoping that the young people that are getting involved in politics can help bring about some level of change within the system as it relates to this political victimization that is taking place within our country.
And yes, and to your point, Mr. Andrews, how do we overcome that? I mean, if you are vying to be to serve in government, should the NDC win the next election, and so how do you overcome that? What kind of structural change needs to happen to ensure that perhaps, let's say, the NDC wins the election, that persons who are of the current ruling administration would themselves not be victims of the kind of political victimization that you talk about?
Well, I'm happy you say that. I'll happy you say that. So you will be going in to serve, because most politicians look at it
The
as
politics should be about service and public service.
Right?
That's what it should be. Yes.
Now, the first thing what I believe is the type of leaders that we elect have a lot to do with this sort of behavior. The NDC has a clear track record as it relates to how we handle matters like this. There were little or no victimization within the 2008 era as it relates to the public service. As a matter of fact, there was little or no political interference in the public service. We allowed the public service to operate as it is constituted to do so. The Public Service Commission was given the authority, not the politicians. We must all understand the role of politicians or government, this sort of position of trying to bring square pegs and put them in wrong holes and hold what position. And I can tell you the experience under the NDC government, the public service actually one that decide those sort of things.
Mm-hmm. Now, some may say that.
If there were, and I'm not doubting that but I challenge anybody I challenge anybody with that. Right. As a matter of fact, I speak to many public servants who served under the NDC back then, and they have actually alluded that the NDC probably allowed certain things to happen that ain't supposed to happen. They should have hold the public servants, a tighter grip, maybe. But the NDC believe that there are systems of government, and we must allow the systems of government to operate. And politicians must do the roles and respond, carry out their duties. We understand that.
And so, Richie.
Yes, just that I am not politically aligned, and I know that there have been credible accusations of victimization on both ends. So I understand Mr. Andrews' position. But I think there are certainly people who would tell you that during the NDC's reign that victimization happened as well. I'm not in a position to argue about the comparative scale of it, but which is why my position is actually slightly different from Brother Andrews'. I don't think it's simply a matter of who we elect into politics or who is leading a particular party or government at the point in time. I think what we need to do is to have strong institutions and empower those institutions such that they can constrain acts of political victimization from whoever it may be. So, for instance, we recently created the office of an ombudsman. It's sort of like a toothless dog. One can make a complaint of political victimization to that ombudsman, but then the most they can do is do a recommendation. And as the brother said, part of the perceived problem in Grenada, because I don't know if it is true, is that the statutory bodies and regulatory bodies which are established and which are supposed to provide certain oversight functions in respect of government actions are themselves staffed by de facto political appointees, even if it's not supposed to be the case, so they don't run. But I think we can, in fact, through law, strengthen the institutions such that we make them less susceptible to that sort of political interference, such that they can perform and such that they have teeth, whether it be punitive powers or mandative powers or something like that, to take action in response to complaints. So I think that is certainly one of the issues. Also, to address one of the points you made earlier, being that in relation to the Miss Gemma Baines case that the government still hasn't paid. Well, that's actually sort of true, and there was a recent court case that was brought where I think Ms. Bain again used the Constitution or some public law measure to try and get the government to enforce. But what the ruling was that she hadn't exhausted other measures that might have been available. Because I can certainly tell you that our courts have been moving in a direction. When you look at the ways that the cases are being decided now, so before you used to find a lot of deference to the executive. They were very hesitant, first of all, to take certain decisions against the executive or against acts which would have been passed. And they were very, very, very skittish of enforcement because, we actually had, a Crown Proceedings Act, which sought to limit how one can force the government to abide by a particular court order. And more courts have been finding that they archaic, they unconstitutional, those proceedings. And the Gary case, for instance, because some people know is one of the biggest cases under this topic, where under the bishop regime, a lot of Gary's land was confiscated, and he sued. Well, he brought a claim against the government. It was actually a constitutional claim of the type that we're speaking about, saying that his rights to property had been interfered with because, of course, he hadn't been compensated, that sort of thing. It wasn't done by the correct process of acquisition, that kind of thing. And one of the things that emerged from that case, which went right up to the Privy Council, is that the courts, in their role as the guardians of the Constitution, actually have very, very, very wide powers in relation to making orders for redress, so orders to fix the situation, including, for instance, sending PSAs or the persons responsible for doing certain things to jail for contempt for failure to do so. So there are options that are becoming more and more available. It's just that I suppose a lot of people don't know about them. But the government can be forced to abide by the orders. Certainly they can. There are many things that persons can do. Now, seeing that the law is developing to sort of allow that, and the courts are stepping up and being more rigid in their role as constitutional guardians. So that's my last
Okay, and Mr. Williams, I'll bring you in here. I saw you were giving us a show of hand here, so I want you to jump in and add to what the gentleman was saying.
Right, I'm not hearing to clear. A call was coming in, a WhatsApp call was coming in, the audio is kind of thing, but I'll still speak, right?
Yes.
But let me just say this. Right? We have to be careful here in Grenada. Let me just say this again. Why? Because when we look back at history, let me just go back a little. In the 70s, late 70s, we had the youths who thought that, their voices could not have been heard, right? I'm talking about Morris and all these guys, and they were starting to get vocal. And you had a Gary government who, as a matter of fact, Gary left orders for them to be killed. Well, according to a report that I saw on, the whole thing, a documentary, Gary was leaving the country and he left orders for them to be killed. In essence, Bishop was saying that they had no choice but to take over the country, which they did it in a form of a revolution. Now we are seeing this again, where you have the voices of the youth are being more and more vocal as we go along, and the youth today feel like the voices are not being heard, right? So we have to be careful. And I know that we will not go back to a situation where we were in 79 with Morris and all these guys. But this is the same thing that really brought about that action. So we need to give the youths a voice in Grenada, right? And I'm saying, despite what political party, despite what laws are in place, we are Grenadians. Now imagine, Ashida made a point. This man, Sarvis with the airport, came and he made his point. I understand Dr. Mitchell in terms of, the man only made a point, the government never responded. But guess what? Here is the Prime Minister defending the man's statement that he made a point. But the youth feel that when they make a point and they are Grenadians, they are being, attacked, and they are being opposed by just speaking. So I'm saying, we need to be careful how we draw that line. Give the youth a chance, despite what political party, what political affiliation, you need to give the youth a chance to speak. The youth are the future. So we have to be very careful about that. And I'm urging, if anyone is listening in terms of NMP and Tevin, even on the NDC side, right? I'm saying when you guys go inside there, you need to even to take, a look at this and try to remedy the situation. And NMP, if you are listening, you need to stop it. You need to give people a chance to speak. Give us the perception that we can say what what we want, responsible, but give us the perception that we can speak and you will listen as youths. Because at the end of the day, in the next 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, Dr. Mitchell will not be there. Who will be there? People like Tevin and
you don't know that he
the
would
other
be there.
folks.
He might be there, but go ahead. He might still be there. You don't know that, but go ahead.
I can't hear properly.
Go ahead. I'm just adding some levity to the. Please proceed. Go ahead.
Right. Me speak?
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Right. And I'm saying, you know what? And me looking on the outside, right? I'm not affiliated. Although Tevin want me to come across on the NDC, right? I'm not affiliated, right? But me looking outside, and I'm seeing this as a Grenadian. I'm saying that we need to speak up because let me just say something. I don't know how much time I have, right? But let me just say something again, right? Something that gets me really upset is the state of the General Hospital. I remember seeing Steele, right, from the NMP, having a plaque saying better healthcare. And Steele was advocating for the better healthcare. Now, Steele was there or is there where he can make a difference, and Steele is like just absent. Still, and I'm saying, why do this to us? Why make us feel like you are the hope? And when we vote you in now, you just disappear. Now, I was speaking to some nurses, Kellon, about 2 weeks ago. And they were saying to me, Andy, you know what? About 3 months now, we are trying to have a meeting with with Minister Nicholas Steele. And we cannot have a meeting with him. He said, they were telling me that their conditions are deplorable. And I mean, if you are so much of a minister of health or whatever in health, you cannot tell me that you would take a plane every time to represent health in this country, but you cannot have a meeting with the same nurses at the hospital. No, that is wrong. And people are afraid to speak up about it, but it is wrong. And I will tell Steele in his face, it is wrong. And this is what we should be speaking about, because in the United States of America, if Biden or Trump or whoever it is have to get elected, they must come with a healthcare plan. And the people hold them accountable to their plan. And I'm saying in Grenada, we need more of this. And the only way we could know, or we can know that these guys are accountable, by us speaking up and saying, you know what, we saw this, we saw that, we do not agree with this, you said this, and what you did was different. We need to speak up. So we need to encourage everyone in Grenada here to speak up and for the voices to be heard. And I, as someone on your side, will ensure that Tevin, your voice is heard, Ashida, your voice is heard, Joel, your voice is heard. And I said over and over again, the only thing that they can do to me is say, Andy, you know what, let's close the hotspot today or tomorrow. And when I say they, I'm talking about NDC or NMP, because even though NDC is in power, I will still be speaking. And that's my view.
And this comes from someone who you said you voted for the new National Party, correct? You voted for the current administration. You said that, right? Okay, I don't think you can hear me. Yeah, that's okay. I don't think you can hear me too well. But Tevin, you have a charge there. You have a charge to ensure that if you get the opportunity to, if your party gets the opportunity to form the next administration, that you would change that culture, that perceived culture that Mr. Williams is talking about, which, by the way, he said that he, is sympathetic to the ruling party in Grenada. So that there can't be any accusation of bias on his part there. Mr. Andrews.
And let me take this opportunity to encourage, to tell Mr. Williams there's room in the heart, because we need everybody on board, including you, Dr. Bubb, and Brother Beatler. Everybody is welcome.
No. My role will be
I understand.
in media.
You have to play a role, but I'm just saying there is room, and we can all assist in building this country together. So one of the things that we are going to ensure that we do, Dr. Bubb, is when we get into office, we have to work together, inclusively with everybody. So I'm hoping that you would also play your role within government. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a party affiliate, but of course you play your part. But I just want to go back.
I will not be silenced. I would say that, whether it's by the
NDC. No. I don't expect you to be. As a matter of fact, journalism was booming under the NDC when between 2008 2013. That's the best I've seen journalism in, one of the best I've seen journalism in Grenada, and you could attest to that as well. So there was free speech. Nobody could have claimed to be victimized or shut up or anything of that. There might have been attempts, but journalism was doing very well under the NDC. I just want to go back to Brother Maitland's point about building strong institutions. And while I do agree with with Brother Maitland, there are institutions there. There are institutions, there are laws and all of that in place. But it all boils down to the type of leaders that we put in place. I recall under the NDC, the how you call them again, the Public Service Commission. They are the ones that selected the Commissioner of Police. Under the NDC, who does it? The Prime Minister. Who has to be a permanent secretary? They may claim that the public service is doing it, but the reality boils the chief have the last say. So there are institutions, but it's not being followed. It's not been respected. And that is why it all boils down to the type of leaders that we elect, the type of leaders that will actually listen to us. And yes, we may need a little bit more teeth here and there in terms of going to Parliament and passing laws and so on. But then again, would those leaders that we elect listen to us? So you see the importance of the type of leaders that we elect. And yes, you have the office of the ombudsman and all of those things. I could tell you from experiences of past ombudsmen and women there, they have made several recommendations. Some of them had forced to resign before their time because the governments are just not listening. The leaders are just not listening to the recommendations and so on. So the institutions are there, and I agree that in some cases may need strengthening, but it boils down to the type of leader and leadership that you have in the country that is willing to do the right thing and allow the institutions to function independently and freely within this country.
Richie, I'm going to bring you in. Go ahead, Richie.
Yes, so I'm not too sure if the disagreement between, is it okay if I call you Tevin? You can call me Rich. The disagreement between Tevin and I is simply semantic. You see, because leaders change. Gary was a god at one point in Grenada, just given his agrarian reform program. And then what happened? He became oppressive. Some people would argue that the New Jewel movement similarly was seen as demigods when they initially started, but the fact is they did some oppressive and very wrong things, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Rastafarians, members of the media, Leslie Pierre, Alistair Hughes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you hear the Leslie Pierre story, Tillman Thomas,
Tillman Thomas, former leader of the NDC, correct.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what we know is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. So you may well have a situation where you say, okay, it's about the type of leadership that we put in place. This man is a good man. But what prevents power from corrupting this good man is institutions that actually have the strength, have the legal underpinning to actually remain independent, and the teeth. So the problem with the ombudsman office is that is a dog with only gum. They can recommend, and their recommendation can be completely ignored without consequence, with impunity, and that's part of the problem. So I think if we actually have stronger institutions and build a culture of strong institutions underpinned by law, then it really wouldn't matter the type of leadership that would be put in place. The fact that they will be overseen by independent and robust institutions would sort of keep them on their feet and ensure that if they are to remain in power, they have to remain good people. I think part of the reason why we are seeing this tension now as well is that there's a sort of shift happening from traditional media to, I suppose, what one would call social media, like the Bubb Report platform, for instance. And that is frightening a lot of the older heads, because whereas before, and a lot of the early freedom of expression cases came out of this, you would have governments revoking transmission licenses or broadcast licenses and not granting them, and people would have to go and fight up in court. You can under order apply to the government of Grenada to run your program here on Facebook. So I think they are now recognizing the power of that and how impactful it can be. And that's what are frightening them. That's why people like Ashida is frightening them. You know, but I'm happy to see that happen, and I want to see more youths doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, Richie. And so I'm going to just take in some comments from the audience. I'm going to start with Sam James here. He said, we need to support our leaders, and our leaders need to support the institutions of the land. There should be no interference in both instances. That is, once things are allowed to function as designed. And to the latter part of that statement, that is so crucial. Once things are allowed to function as designed. Vonrick Roberts, that is saying good point. Since the Keith Mitchell got the diamond. Okay, I'm going to stay away from that. Let's see here. We have another comment. I have teachers who wants to take part in the protests, but because they support the administration, don't want other supporters to see them in protests. Then we have another comment from Mr. Selvin Ray. He says, for me, it's healthy to have criticisms from both sides, but when it's clearly shrouded in unsubstantiated political propaganda and intellectual deceit, then it becomes a big turn off. Let's see. We have another comment here. Tessabari saying, afraid to speak out because of victimization, dependency syndrome. You can't bite the hands that feed you. That is, in my preparation for this program today, that is one of the underlying thought processes that percolated up in conversations we were having with our producers, right? That there is a dependency syndrome, and so because your economic survival is tied to the needs or tied to the benevolence of those in power, that you do not want to bite the hands that feed you. And so, Mr. Williams, I see you nodding there. I just want you to pick up on that, please.
Right, because let me tell you, right. Let me tell you this. Now, when you see this happening, you create a lot of yes men in the country. So basically, Kellon, you feed me, right? So if you slap your neighbor, Kellon is right. If you take your neighbor car, Kellon is right. If you bounce on a man, Kellon is right. And that's what is happening. And I'm saying we have too much yes men in Grenada. Basically, once you're eating our food, whatever any party do, you're on board with them. And that is just nonsense, right? And that's why I keep on saying that we are Grenadians before we are NMP or NDC-ites, right? We are Grenadians or we were Grenadians. And so this thing, what the point that this person just made is so correct, because what you find happening, the choice you make or the one that you choose or whatever stance that you take depends on who is feeding you. And that is wrong. That is wrong. We need to be more independent. We need to be, you know what? Kellon, you are feeding me, but this is what you're doing is wrong. Simple. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if you consider me your friend, Kellon, right? If you consider me a supporter, I should be able to tell you exactly what is wrong and what is right without being scared or without being in fear. And this is the kind of culture we have to bring back in Grenada, a culture where, you know what? We are not making up our mind based on who is feeding us. We have, because watch me, we have the youth, we have our children who right now, who will be coming up in the future. And the decision that we make today depends on the future that they have. Right now, I'm sitting in my veranda right now. I'm looking at a project on the hill up there, right? Where some people just bought an excavator to finish up. And I see about 10 Chinese men on the hill there, starting some project. If I can switch the camera and show you. And I'm saying, you know what, these are work that Grenadians should have been having. China is so big, Grenada is so small. We should be going across it to help them, not they come here to take our jobs, So it depends on, our opinion depends on who is feeding us, which is wrong, just wrong. So that person is right.
And Richie, jump in, please.
I'm driving, but don't mind. I agree with that. And related to that is the fact that as Grenadians, we don't really vote according to political issues. it's sort of clannish. It's weird. It's sort of like, you know, football teams, Chelsea versus Manchester. That's the behavior that I see. So it's like, if my family was green, then I'm going to be green. I'm seeing everything through a green tinted lens. So I don't care about the evidence. I don't care about actually looking at a healthcare plan or policy. I don't care about the rational arguments. I'm green and I'm green. That's my team. Just like if my team was Manchester United.
Right.
And both sides operate like that. And I think that that's a culture we have to change. So I would like to see, for instance, prime ministerial debates. I would like to see productions of fiscal policies, detailed fiscal policies, foreign relation policies that we as people have to kind of consider before voting. You know, part of that also requires being politically educated to the level where that sort of analysis and discourse among the people can happen, which is why I would like to see civics reintroduced into the school. But we have a part to play. It's not just about blaming the politicians. You know, it's a negative relay route, because we as well have bought into and support this party clannishness that is part of the problem of why we're here now.
And you know, sometimes I say to people, sometimes it's the foot soldiers. You know, sometimes the ones who are at the top echelons of leadership doesn't even know what's happening on the ground. And you know, my very good friend Ambassador Clarence Charles, who's going to be here next week. You know, I speak to Ambassador Charles all the time about this, and I say to her, look, you know, she even acknowledged that politics is too personal in Grenada. You know. And so, of course, but we need to get to the end of the program, and I'm going to bring in Mr. Williams and Mr. Andrews just to give us some closing comments. Which one of you gentlemen want to start?
I'm Kevin first.
Okay, well,
yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, my brother. I do appreciate it. Listen, Grenada belongs to all of us, and I do agree with everything that Brother E.G. and Brother Maitland said earlier on, as it relates to the comment that that my dear friend made a while ago, as it relates to the hands that feed us. We shouldn't bite it. Grenada needs a change, whether we like it or not. It needs a change in how we go about doing things, as it relates to policy, as it relates to leadership, as it relates to having an opposition force within the country. In Parliament, Grenada needs leadership, new leadership, fresh ideas. And I believe that the National Democratic Congress, I believe that the team of people that we have is on that journey to bring about new change within this country. And I'm hoping that Grenadians could understand that and join with the NDC so that we could bring about this positive change in this country. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's too little laborers. So we are encouraging people to get on board and let us do what we have to do to save this great country of ours.
Speaking of that, I'm going to put you in the hot seat there for a second, Mr. Andrews.
No problem at all.
Is it fair to say that Mr. Kem Jones is a kingmaker for some of you, yourself, and brother? What's the brother's name? It's escaping me now. But is it fair? Ron Redhead, yes. Are you guys going to be contesting the leadership of your party at the next convention?
Let me address the first question. Is Kem Jones a king? No.
Yes.
Kem Jones is not. Kem Jones have always said that he is an independent man. He has his independent view. And we all believe that Kem, Kem has his independent views, and his view is his view. He can't make any decisions for us. Likewise, we can't make any decisions for him. So the answer to that first part of your question is no. The second part, I didn't get it.
Yeah, the second part of my question: are you going to be contesting the political leadership of the National Democratic Congress? Are you going to be giving us a
political leadership? No. I would not be contesting the leader to become leader of the NDC. If that's what you're asking me, I am not interested in becoming the leader of the NDC at this time. So if that's what you're asking me, no. if you're asking about other positions on the national executive, it's something that I'm giving consideration. I'm giving thought to it. Karakwan Piti Matnik has changed from a safe seat for the NNP to now a battleground seat. Because in the past, NNP has always won by safe margin, big margins. 2013 was one of those where they won by almost 700 votes. And the last election when I contested, we brought that margin down to 170. So it's not a political battleground seat. I'm considering whether I should, take up a post at the national executive level, at the leadership level, or just focus all of my energy here in Karakwan Piti Matnik. And I think that the latter is most important, because we really want to bring home this seat for the NDC and to take Karakwan Piti Matnik forward. So let's see how things go. But most likely, my energy will be focused here in Karakwan Piti Matnik.
Okay, all right. Mr. Williams, closing thoughts from you, sir.
So let me attack it one time now. Kellogg.
Yes.
Let me tell you.
Yes.
No, I mentioned to the NNPites and to the NNP party. You are behaving like a runaway train, right? The people who put you there, you are behaving like if you don't care about them. And that needs to change, right? It needs to change immediately. Let me talk to the NDC. Kevin, I do not like your answer. And I tell you, I'm not a yes man. We good, but I don't like your answer. Let me tell you why. NDC is perceived to be a party of old people, right? Which young people cannot relate to. That is why you find more of the younger folks move towards the NNP. Kid may be old, but he knows how to play the game. He knows how to come up with his tight pants and all kind of thing. He knows how to catch the young people. So NDC have to move away from being the party of the more mature to being, a party that could get everyone. And to me, the NDC need a young, vibrant leader. And Tevin, I think you can be that. I think Ron can be that. And I think this is what we need to see. Number two. Number three, doesn't matter which party is there, or doesn't matter which party you support as Grenadians, we need for you to listen to the youths, right? The youths need their voices to be heard. Gone are the days when you are probably 40 years before you can get a bachelor. No, someone with 21, 23 years can have a bachelor degree. And trust me, they have opinions, and you need to hear them. Lastly, Grenadians. Now, when we blame NNP and NDC for all kind of things, right? But at the end of the day, we are the ones to be blamed. Because when these parties see that they can do anything, and we can speak for 14 days and shut our mouth up, they will continue to do anything. So I urge everyone, when you go to a political rally, listen to what they are saying, right? Listen to what they are doing when they come into power, right? And also, when you're voting for people, vote for people with a track record. Someone with a record of doing things. Not someone that just come out, Johnny come lately and just come and just say, they're running and you vote them in. No. Vote for someone who have a heart to fix your issues, and not just vote blindly for any party, but vote for, test people, because at the end of the day, I'm disappointed, and let me tell you, no one can shut me up, right? I'm disappointed in Steele, because Steele came there with no track record, and he's leaving with no track record. That is someone that came into power and didn't do anything at all, in my view, right? So we have to be more responsible as citizens. When we go to a rally, don't just go and drink rum and just, listen to what they are saying. Listen to if it makes sense, and if it doesn't make sense, and speak about it. Now we have social media, you have no excuse why you can't speak about the issues if you agree or you don't agree with anything. So that is my take on it, Kellogg. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
All right. And I will be bringing you back. I like your candor, and I like your fearlessness. You can be friends with folks in the political establishment and still critique them. As I have very good relationships with folks on either side of the political divide in Grenada. And I will critique the government of Grenada as someone who is a journalist, as I'm supposed to do. Right? I'm not going to kowtow to whatever their agenda is. It's about ensuring that you hold the powerful to account, regardless of who they are. And so, Richie, I'm going to bring you in for some closing thoughts.
Yeah, because I was in backstage for a bit. I was going to say, I too agree that we need to develop a culture of candor, being frank, with each other. And I really appreciate it. I don't remember the hotspot guy's name, but the fact that he was straight about the fact that he voted for NNP, because I realize in Grenada that's something people even free to talk about, say who they vote for. So I would say too that I voted for NNP. And I think the reason is that, well, two main reasons. I think the NDC, both as a party and then the party base, is too conservative for me. And beyond that, I don't trust in their ability to be organized and remain organized. So I think that is a very big issue with the party, and you all need to get that together. Because as much as people might say, oh, keep thieving, keep doing that, what. Grenada is at a crucial point right now in relation to just the global economy and everything that's happening. So we need an organization, an organized entity to be able to manipulate and push Grenada forward in this very complex world that we live in. And I just don't know that the public has the impression, the trust that NDC is that. So I think that is part of the issue. I agree with the initial point. Or I wouldn't say we don't have an opposition, but I don't think we have an opposition that can compete in any substantive way with the government of the day. And that's my last contribution.
All right, Attorney Richie Maitland, Tevin Andrews of the National Democratic Congress, and Mr. Asia Williams of the Hotspot. There, let me thank Mr. Samuel James for connecting me with the brother, and certainly we're going to have him back here on the Bubb Report. Listeners, thank you. This has been a very long show, but I felt that we were able to get in some very good conversations this morning and this afternoon. So thank you again on behalf of the entire production team. I am your host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. Until next week, have a wonderful time. Bye-bye.